only thought about letting it go. The last 50 miles or so, legs are breaking and my feet are sore. Still a long, long way to go. Contra-ta-ta, contra-ta-ta. There's always something better or there's something worse. Whether you are last or first, it's probably not a choice you'd take if you knew what you were up against. Contra-ta-ta, contra-ta-ta. When your bomb detector couldn't find a golf ball, more than likely it's of no use at all. If you're lying or you're telling the truth, what exactly are you trying to prove? Contra-ta-ta, contra-ta-ta. Always thought about letting it go. The last million miles or so, heart is breaking and my head is sore. Still a long, long way to go. Contra-ta-ta, contra-ta-ta.
From Glasgow, Scotland, it's the Maybes right here on the Tony Jones Show. The aforementioned Maybes, they're not local music, as I just mentioned. They're from Scotland. However, they're independent music, so we're going to lump them in on the program here, as we always do. We're going to hear two from them, so we're going to have a second track in just a little bit. We're going to hear from the Maybes a little bit more. And the local music will continue, but as I mentioned earlier at the top of the broadcast, a good old-fashioned protest going down. I'm going to call it a protest. They've been calling it a press conference. When I think of a press conference, I think of a bunch of old fuddy-duddies hanging around talking about sports. So I'm going to dub it a protest. We have Dave Fisher from the Coalition, online at coalitionradio.us, in studio with me. He's going to tell us a little bit about that, but Dave, you're probably getting kind of the same pushback that I'm getting because we're both huge supporters and promoters of Rhode Island's hospitality scene.
Right.
And there's a lot of people thinking that this is going to be a boom for hospitality. And I'm not seeing the case for that.
No, actually,
so far.
and you know, when this whole stadium proposal first came up, the first thing I did was start to look into sports economists and different papers that were written. And we've seen this all across the country where team owners and new team owners come to cities and states and look for these massive tax subsidies in order to build stadiums that, quite frankly, don't do what they're supposed to do on the back end as far as the economic impact of the stadiums. It's true of Major League Baseball, NFL stadiums, and even more true of these AAA, smaller league ball clubs and stadiums. And there's a great paper out there. If anybody's interested, the guy by the name of Victor Matheson, he's a sports economist at Holy Cross University, or School of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts. He also plays organ in his church on Sunday, which I think is pretty cool. But you can find him online. If you just Google Victor Matheson sports stadiums, pretty much the first thing you're going to see is a report by him and a guy by the name of Beatty. And, they go through literally hundreds of ballparks all over the country, whether it be football, baseball, soccer stadiums, you name it. The general consensus is there is little to no economic development impact from these projects. The only plus of the projects is what they call the amenity factor, where, yes, it's nice to have a state-of-the-art ballpark in your city, but it's certainly not creating good-paying jobs. In the case of AAA baseball, even the players aren't making minimum wage.
And some of those are in areas where the weather is not inclement. We have in our little piece of paradise, we would be able to get maybe 2, 3, if you're lucky, 4 months of good use out of an outdoor stadium.
Well, and let's not also forget the proposal puts the stadium directly on the Providence waterfront. We have a hurricane barrier there for a reason, folks. Because
a broken hurricane barrier.
Right. So, who's to say that? Look at what happened with Hurricane Sandy a few years back. Here's a storm that made landfall 500 miles south of Rhode Island and completely devastated our shorelines.
Right.
So. I shudder to think that something like that would happen, that we dump a bunch of money into building this stadium, and then a big hurricane comes along and pretty much trashes it. That said, we have had a couple of small victories this week in our protest movement. We've been urging people to call their representative centers, member of the House Finance Committee, the governor's office, and also the folks at the I-195 Commission. So our first small victory was we got the I-195 Commission to open up their meeting with the team ownership, Jim Skeffington and Larry Lucchino. And they're going to open it up to the public. They're not taking any public comment, so it's a very seen and not heard kind of thing.
Now, they opened it up to the public, however, and we've talked about this a bit on this show and on other shows, about people kind of being edged out of civic involvement because they are now opening it to the public, but it's on a Monday at 4 o'clock. Most people I know, open to the public or not, aren't available on a Monday afternoon at 4 o'clock.
Right, and if you think about it, like 4 o'clock is that sweet spot between first and second shift.
Right.
Because you're not getting out of work from first shift till 5, and you're on your way to work at 4 if you're working second shift.
So unless you're
and you're probably asleep if you're working the third shift.
Unless you're a self-employed lawyer, you probably can't make it out to this meeting.
Right. So, that certainly makes it difficult, and God forbid that anybody tell their boss that they want to knock off work a couple of hours early to go to a protest.
Exactly the situation that I'm going to be in on Monday. I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to have to scoot out of here so I can go scream at these guys up in Providence.
Well, and I think that unfortunately, business owners don't really see the benefit of having an engaged workforce, people who are on top of issues and are willing to go out there and be active on these things. So our other small victory just came today. We've been trying to put as much public pressure as we can, not only on the leadership here in the state. I have been, I guess the nice way to put it is lambasting.
I like to call it bird dogging.
Yeah, I have been sandbagging, lambasting, bird dogging Jim Skeffington for the last week or so on our blog at Coalition Radio. And I've been attacked because I've been, quote, characterizing Mr. Skeffington, but my argument is I think he did a fine enough job of characterizing himself. We've likened him to C. Montgomery Burns of the
Monorail.
Monorail. The lid came off my pudding can. Use my penknife, my good man. And then, we also likened him to the Supreme Emperor Palpatine of Star Wars fame, who is the embodiment of the dark side of the Force. But again, how many times can the taxpayers get hosed by these deals, like the convention center, like
the convention center, which incidentally will be at for the cannabis convention in a few weeks' time, but the convention center, which is, if you're not aware, hemorrhaging money.
Yeah, to the tune of a couple of $1 million a year,
right,
in losses. And that was supposed to be the panacea. That was the silver bullet for Providence, right?
The Big Sky Bridge was gonna make it all happen,
right? These projects rarely come to fruition. And at the end of the day, what it amounts to is corporate welfare.
Even our friends at the Fetish Flea Market moved their event from the Providence Convention Center right down the street to the Crown Plaza here in Warwick.
So there you go. Even local businesses are not seeing the benefit of using the Providence Civic Center. So our second victory this week was we learned today that Mr. Skeffington and Lucchino, Mr. Skeffington and Lucchino sent a letter to the governor today on a Saturday, which is very telling, saying that we're willing to work with the state, and they actually put the purchase of the land on the 195 redevelopment district. They put the purchase on the table, whereas before they didn't want to pay a dime for the land.
Right.
So again, a small victory. I think this fight is far from over, but you got to take what you can when you can and celebrate it.
So we kind of jumped right into it, and of course, I'll be shameless here and say that the Tony Jones Show audience is the best and the brightest out there. But what I want to do after we hear a little bit more from the maybes is I kind of want to work backwards. I'll have you kind of give the elevator level speech or pitch of why we're against this. For anybody that's just catching up, maybe they're thinking about coming out on Monday, because we kind of just jumped right into the meat of it. So if there's people that have kind of been following this a little bit and aren't quite sure what to think about it, we're going to get into that in just a little bit. Well, in actually 2 minutes and 50 seconds, because we're going to hear from the maybes now. This track, Set the Controls. You were tuned in to the Tony Jones Show.
You should see the soda. I hear it's quite a view. Used to be a quasar. It's coming from the heart straight to you. Surfing on the magma, there's nothing else to do. Looking for the pole star, but I'm easily confused. It's coming from the heart straight to you. Listen to the sunset. Why is it so obscure? Used to be a gas cloud for a second or two. It's coming from the heart straight to you. Rolling on the lava, nothing else to do. Trying to take a picture, but I'm easily amused.